can't open the files.
Do you want me to help you?
Yes, oh, thanks. This is what I hear.
No, exactly.
I don't know.
You don't, you're
Unnecessary
the Jack and Jill of all trades. Good call you, Jill.
Okay.
You know, it goes like you go into it and then you go back to come into it tonight. I don't know, I'll never change it. Yeah, Rick.
Alright, you know what you need.
Welcome councillors, staff and gallery to the July Ordinary Meeting of Council. I formally open the meeting, and in formally opening the meeting I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout the Barossa region and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture, and pay our sincere respects to their elders past, present and emerging. In welcoming you all to the July meeting, I'd like to make a special welcome to Dr. Melissa Whitrow, who's now taking on a relieving role as our Senior Manager of Community Services. So welcome, Ms Whitrow. And an apology I have received from Councillor De Vries. So we'll make note that an apology from Councillor De Vries. He's a little unwell at the moment, and he was thinking of us and not wanting to share it with us, which I greatly appreciated on your behalf. Minutes from the previous meeting for confirmation. They were the council meeting held on Tuesday the 10th of June 2023 at 5:30 and the special council meeting held on Wednesday the 5th of July at 5:30. 20th of June, what did I say? Okay, correction, we'll stay with the 20th because that's what I've got too. Moved Councillor Angus, seconded Councillor Lane. All those in favour? Carried. Item 2.2.1, which is for information, that's the South Australian Public Library Network Outcomes and Barossa Library Customer Service Report. We'll move on to item 3.1.1, which is a petition for a community exercise station on page 20. Oh, sorry, okay. Go back to the South Australian Public Library one. We do have to move and second it, that we receive and note it, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Priest, and seconded Councillor Truth. All those in favour? Carried. Move to page 20, which is the petition, and that Council receive and note the petition and consider the project for funding as part of the 2024-25 financial year as part of a new initiative assessment. Councillor Angus and Councillor Priest.
No.
Question?
Question, please.
Yes, thank you.
Where is Civic Park? And if it can't be identified, where is the location of this proposed facility, and what does the facility involve?
CEO, you or no, Mr. Clark.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I took it as a reference from what we could entail Tolly Reserve over here, and the repairs they're requesting similar to what's out of stock, with some of those exercise machines, the circuits that they can do through some research by Big Project. That costs around about $65,000 for the setup at Stockwell. So that was what they were kind of asking for.
Moved Councillor Priest and seconded Councillor Angus. Any further comment? All those in favour? Carried. We'll move. No Mayor's report this month. I'll have to double up next month. Matters for information. Is there any questions regarding any of those matters for information, which are listed there on section 6? Okay, we'll move to the,
Sorry, I had a question.
sorry?
I had a question.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yep,
Just in
councillor
re-
Greatwood, sorry.
No, thank you. I might just move back a little bit. Just in relation to the Hydrogen Renewable Energy Act and the request to have that sort of character preservation area, excised is not the right word, but to have an exclusion whereby those licences couldn't be granted. Do we have any precedent? Has that happened before where that the Character Preservation Act has been able to be deployed in that way, and has that been successful, or is it just kind of a little bit of it's unlikely to be successful, but we're just sort of putting it out there as a request?
CEO?
Thanks. No, it's never been used in that way. The Character Preservation Act's a very high-level act that talks about administrative acts. So any decision made by a government, be it a panel, be it a council, be it a state government, has to give due regard to the principles of the Character Preservation Act if it's in the area or affects the area. And that's essentially what we're saying with the submission. It's consistent with wind turbines. It doesn't mean that it's a prohibition, but it's a higher test. That's all it is. No, it's never been tested, to my knowledge, in a court. But for instance, when the Development Assessment Panel considers its applications, it has to give due regards to the Character Preservation Act and the principles of that Act in making its decision.
Thank you. Any further questions? We'll move on to the debate reports. 7.1, the Office of Mayor and CEO. The first item, 7.1.1, the CEO has advised me that we've received further information in relation to that item that may impact on our decision. So this item will be withdrawn from the agenda and brought back to a future meeting once we have that additional information for the members. Then we can consider it more appropriately. So we'll just withdraw that item, and thank you, Councillor Barrett. 7.1.2 on page 110 is the review of the public submissions and final adjustments to the annual budget and business plan and budget for the 2022-23 financial year. As the recommendation indicates there, that there was no submissions were made at the special meeting on the 5th of July with the draft annual business plan. The public submissions were received during the consultation period and they were outlined in the report. So there's further information. So it's a matter of endorsing attachment 2. Question?
We can have the financial Mark give a talk on the rates and all that.
I think we can probably deal with that a little bit later, or is it appropriate to deal with it now? Or?
So that is, through you, Mr Mayor, I think you're referring to when we talk about the adoption of the budget?
Budget, yeah.
That's the special meeting.
Yeah, that's later. Yep, okay. Councillor Schilling.
Yeah, happy to move the recommendation, but does that have to be part of, is that part of this item, or is that part of this is part of this item?
No, that's part of the
next
annual
bit,
business
The
sorry.
next one, yeah.
So I'm happy to
Okay.
move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Move Councillor Schilling and seconded Councillor Greatwich. All those in favour? Carried. On page 122, 7.1.3 is the Tanunda Recreational Park club rooms and change rooms redevelopment, looking at a tree removal arising from stormwater redesign of that particular project, with some recommendations there for council to consider. Any questions? Councillor Priest.
Yeah, just in regards to this, I'm just going to query the CO, because I think previously we've had requests to remove trees and the costs have come back at 15,000. I think it was Councillor Tony Hearn to have trees removed in front of someone's house who was digging up the driveway or something. But here we are having a significant tree removed at $6,000, and yet the trees that Councillor Hearn was talking about wasn't even significant, but we couldn't do it. But now we can all of a sudden remove trees, and the cost is only $6,000. So could I ask why the discrepancy in the costs?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Priest. That was never fully quoted, that particular tree. Obviously, it came to the council in terms of does it consider that it wants to be removed. That was a broad estimate. Each tree is different, obviously, as I'm sure you're aware. The consideration of that tree is that it did not present risk. This does present risk. I will actually add. We've actually done, the guys have done their damnedest to try and survive and keep that tree alive as well, but it's not going to, it's simply because of where it is.
Does look a little bit scrawny. Okay. There's a recommendation, if there's no further questions. Councillor Angus. Councillor Hearn. All those in favour? Carried. On page 133, 7.1.4 is the Strategic and Economic Planning Needs Service Proposal.
I have a question.
Councillor Schilling.
I guess my question is directed to the CEO about the strategic planning that we're doing at the moment, and my concern is that Concordia might take our attention away from our core business of what we're doing here in the Barossa Council. So, yeah, I just wanted to raise that as a concern as we move forward with our business plans. That we are always mindful that, yes, Concordia is an important project, but not to lose sight of what we're trying to achieve in our Barossa.
You mean in the rest of the Barossa?
In the rest of the Barossa,
yeah, okay,
correct.
yeah, good.
Yeah.
CEO.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Councillor Schilling. This is stage one of mitigating some of those risks. We absolutely know Concordia is going to be a significant piece of work over the next few years. Obviously, the executive will absorb some of it, but there is a significant amount of, shall I say, business as usual strategic work to be done that simply needs some support. So Concordia will be one part of this, absolutely, but it's also Concordia is going to need the 12 of you, the rest of the exec team, other consultant work over the next 2 or 3 years in terms of how that's going to roll out. There is also the other work that, rightfully we've set. So this is step one of actually starting to address that resourcing issue. I suspect as Concordia develops, we're going to need more resourcing in the early stages. We've started to build financial models and what that all looks like, but we need more understanding of how it rolls out. For instance, let's say it did roll out on a 35-year basis and it was an average. So that's 350 development applications every year for the next 35 years. That's a 40% increase in development applications. So we are already planning and trying to understand what those resourcing needs will be. But we need to do the work up front in that space. So I share a similar concern and risk, and that's why it's here. But there are other work that we also, and the community has also asked us to get on with as well. So don't be surprised if there's more that comes in that conversation in the next 12, 18 months.
Councillor Greatwich.
I was going to be pleased to move it, but if there is another question.
I'll get you to... You got a question, Councillor?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay.
Of the CEO, just continuing on from Councillor Schilling. It's taken that long, I've forgotten what I was going to say. It was
30 seconds ago, Councillor.
Yeah, well, I am an old man, but I'm working on it. I'll have another orange juice. With boundary reforms and the possibility of changes in the future, it's hypothetical at this point in time, but has any consideration been given to that in your senior management discussions?
Well, I can throw something in, but you start.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Hearn. I guess the most important thing to understand about boundary reform is a strategy that you guys have put on the table for a long term. Now, a recent decision by Gawler Council has in essence removed the immediate conversation. Where that lands in years to come, I can't predict that outcome. The reality is Concordia needs to be managed now, with the likelihood that they fundamentally want to start digging in the next 18 to 24 months. So, and the government's throwing significant resources at all this planning. So what happens in the future in terms of boundary reform, I think right now is a moot point. Will it change in the future? I don't know, but the conversation's going to have to, no doubt, well, you've asked for it to be on the list of what that might look like in the years to come. But the most immediate component related to Concordia, and obviously Hewitt and a little bit of Springwood, as I understand, the resolution of Gawler Council is currently stopped, and what happens from there I don't actually have an answer for at the moment.
So if they did happen to resume in 5-10 years' time and we'd spent so many millions of dollars, would we be compensated for that?
Thanks, Mr Mayor.
I would say absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's the
But
thing.
there are
So-
things to
Councillor
be
Hinton.
worked out though. Yep.
Yeah, so the mechanism with the Act's quite complex, and
Yes.
I'd be more than happy to brief you on it when we get to that point. But there's a whole independent analysis that would assess the viability of that. So let's say Concordia, like you're saying, in 5-10 years, there's a couple of thousand houses built. And there's a decision to move it to another council, and say it's Gawler. There is a significant mechanism to try and establish if that's the right thing for the community, if it's the right thing for everybody's financials, what compensation may have to be included in all that, and there's an extensive analysis of that. I can't tell you whether we would get compensation or what that compensation might be, but no proposal can leave a council worse off.
Thank you.
Anything further? Councillor Angus?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, if I may, just to reiterate the fact that we are choosing to maintain our involvement with this process, at least puts us in the driving seat for the planning and development of what happens in the early stages. Even if it does become someone else's, a different council's property, we're not stuck with potentially bad planning on their part. Whatever planning has gone into it will be our responsibility, and I hope we'll do a decent job of it, and we won't be regretting driving past someone else's bad decisions. So that's the reason I think it's important for us to maintain being at the table, or in fact being the table.
Thank you. Councillor Greatwich, you was happy to move that before, can I? Yeah, okay, thank you. Moved Councillor Greatwich and seconded Councillor Barrett. Any further comment? All those in favour? Carried. Page 149. Page 149 is the lease licences and hire permit policy, the post-consultation draft for adoption with some amendments that's been picked up from a submission which was very well presented. Any questions? Councillor Priest.
I'd just like to thank Mrs. Susie for putting this this wording in. Could I have the CEO comment on what she's written, Mrs. Susie?
Well, you can, but I think the comments were in the body of the report.
It's in the report.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yep. So they're
Could I-
really the comments where some of those key points have been included and picked up and identified some of those points that were highlighted, which was very good. Yep. You happy with that? Okay, thank you. Yep.
I'll move it.
Moved Councillor Priest and seconded Councillor Schilling. No further comment. Either one wish to speak to it? Thank you. All those in favour? Carried. Page 172. Page 172 is the annual report for the internal review of Council's decision for the 2022-2023, with a recommendation that Council receives and approves the annual report on the internal review for Council's decision applications for that period of time according to the Local Government Act. Any questions?
Because we have to do it by legislation.
Moved Councillor Angus, seconded Councillor Troop. Either one wish to speak? All those in favour? Carried. Page 176. Page 176 is the monthly financial report as of the 30th of June 2023, with the uniform presentation of financial reports provided in the information, highlighting Council's material financial trends and transactions, with a recommendation. Any questions? Can I have a mover? Councillor Greatwich. And a seconder, Councillor Thompson. Either one wish to speak? Thank you. Any other comment? All those in favour? Carried. Page 179 is the item 7.4.1, which is the consideration and adoption of committee resolutions, the Barossa Bush Gardens, with their minutes from the Bush Gardens Section 41 committee meeting held on the 14th of June for Council to adopt the resolutions contained within. Any questions?
Yes. A brief question just to make sure I understood this correctly, because it felt a little bit circular of reading the minutes with the resolution and then going back into the recommendation. I just want to be really clear that what the Barossa Bush Gardens Committee has resolved is that they will undertake sort of something of a research project as to whether there's a better structure for the organisation going forward rather than a Section 41 committee, and that then if they make that determination, they'll bring that back to say this is how we'd like to go forward. Is that correct? Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Moved Councillor Troop and seconded Councillor Lane. Either one wish to speak? No further comment. All those in favour? Carried. Members, that's the conclusion of our ordinary meeting for the July meeting. Our next scheduled ordinary meeting is the Tuesday the 15th of August 2023 at 5:30. I will highlight that we do have a special meeting agenda items that will come up at 6 o'clock. So with that, I'll formally close the ordinary meeting for July, and we'll wait for the appropriate time at 6 o'clock for the special meeting. Thank you.